Ava Collins had always believed her life was perfectly ordinary. For as long as she could remember, she had lived happily as a girl with her loving parents, Emily and Jacob Collins, who cared for her deeply. One ordinary afternoon, while returning from school, Ava noticed a missing person advertisement flashing on a digital screen at a bus stop shelter. The ad featured a little boy, and this single image would soon change her life forever, leading her to uncover her parents' dark secret, a truth far more sinister than any child her age should ever have to bear. Even as the narrative unfolds, the reader is invited to imagine where you are watching and to join in the astonishment of the unfolding mystery. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves as Ava, a bright and gentle 9-year-old with brown hair and fair skin, stood outside her elementary school in Washington on a Friday afternoon. The excitement of the impending weekend and school holidays buzzed among her classmates. Yet Ava stood quietly, clutching her small backpack tightly to her chest as she scanned the street for any sign of her mother. The school day had been long and challenging, especially due to the math test that had loomed over her third-grade class all week. Ava felt a mixture of relief and anxiety as she replayed the test questions in her mind, wondering if she had performed as well as she hoped. As the minutes ticked by and more of her classmates were picked up by their parents or boarded the yellow school buses, a twinge of impatience grew in her chest. She knew her mother worked hard and sometimes ran late, but the wait always felt longer when she was alone. Just as Ava was about to ask the school secretary to call home, she spotted a familiar figure rounding the corner. Emily, her mother, walked briskly toward the school, her long coat billowing slightly in the breeze. "Mom," Ava called out, her face breaking into a wide smile as she ran to meet her. Emily's tired expression softened at the sight of her daughter. She opened her arms wide and enveloped Ava in a warm embrace. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm sorry I'm a little late. How was your day?" Emily asked in a gentle, apologetic tone. Ava, pulling back slightly with bright eyes filled with a mix of emotions, replied, "It was okay. We had our math test today. It was pretty hard, but I think I did all right." Emily nodded sympathetically and said, "I'm sure you did great. Honey, you've been studying so hard for it." Hand in hand, they began to walk away from the school. As they strolled, Ava chattered about the events of her day. Her best friend Chloe's funny remark at lunch, the new art project introduced in class, and of course more details about the dreaded math test. Soon, they arrived at the bus stop, a simple structure with a bench and a clear plastic shelter that was currently empty except for them. While they sat down to wait, Ava's attention was unexpectedly drawn to the digital ad display mounted on one side of the shelter. The screen, which had been showing an advertisement for a local restaurant, suddenly changed. Ava's eyes widened as she saw the image that now appeared. A missing poster featuring a young boy, no more than 2 years old, with tousled brown hair and large, sorrowful eyes. "Mom, look," Ava said, pointing at the screen. "It's a missing kid. Why do little kids go missing? Don't their parents look after them?" Emily, who had been scrolling through her phone absent-mindedly, looked up at Ava's words. As her gaze fell on the missing person ad, something in her expression shifted, subtle tightening around her eyes and a slight parting of her lips, which Ava noticed immediately. "Mom," Ava prompted gently when her mother did not respond. Emily blinked, as if emerging from a trance. "Well, honey, these ads are there in the hope that the public might see that person somewhere," she replied, her voice strained. Yet, Ava frowned, unsatisfied with the answer. "Yes, but why do they just disappear? Don't their parents care? Why don't they search for their child themselves?" Before Emily could answer, the silence grew uncomfortable. The ad now displayed the name Evan Matthews beneath the boy's photo, and just as Ava was about to ask again, the rumble of an approaching bus broke the tension. Emily abruptly stood up, taking Ava's hand. "Look, the bus is here. Let's go home," she said, her voice a little too bright. Reluctantly, they boarded the bus. As Ava cast one last glance at the ad display, the image of the little boy with sad eyes lingered in her mind, a nagging question that remained unanswered. Inside the warm, stuffy bus, in stark contrast to the crisp autumn air outside, Ava and Emily found seats near the middle, settling into worn fabric cushions as the bus lurched into motion. Still buzzing with questions about the missing child she had seen, Ava began softly, "Mom, how do people just go missing? I don't understand." Emily, who had been staring out the window with a distant look, turned to face her daughter. Her expression was a mixture of fatigue and something Ava couldn't quite place. Was it worry or perhaps frustration? "Ava, please," Emily said in a strained voice. "I've had a long day at work, and I need some peace right now. Can we talk about something else?" Ava's face fell, a pang of guilt washing over her. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know you were so tired." Emily's expression softened further as she reached out to stroke Ava's hair. "It's okay, sweetheart. You couldn't have known. Let's just enjoy the ride home." They sat in silence for a few moments as the gentle rocking of the bus and the muffled conversations of other passengers created a soothing background. Suddenly, a sharp electronic chime cut through the ambient sounds. Emily reached into her purse, pulled out her smartphone, and glanced at the screen before looking back at Ava. "It's time for your medicine, honey," she said, already reaching back into her purse. Ava's nose wrinkled slightly as she asked, "Do I have to? My stomach feels empty. Can't I eat something first?" Emily shook her head firmly. "You know the rules, Ava. You have to take your asthma medicine at this time. No excuses." Emily then pulled out a small pill bottle and a water bottle from her bag. Though Ava's shoulders slumped in resignation, she reluctantly held out her hand for the pill. Emily's voice softened as she reminded her gently, "Remember when you almost suffocated during sleep? It was because you didn't take your asthma pills that day." A flicker of fear passed through Ava's eyes as the memory surfaced. The terror of waking up in the middle of the night, her chest tight and struggling to draw breath. "But Mom," Ava said hesitantly, "I remember taking my pills that day. Why didn't they work?" Emily paused for a moment, her hands still outstretched with the pill, and explained slowly, "You didn't take the pill on time that day. You took it too late, so it didn't work as intended." Ava frowned slightly, trying to reconcile this explanation with her hazy memories. But the recollection of fear was enough to silence any further doubts. She took the pill from her mother's hand and swallowed it with a gulp of water. "Good girl," Emily said with a small smile. "I know it's not fun, but it's important for your health." The remainder of the bus ride passed in relative silence. Ava watched the familiar streets of their neighborhood pass by outside the window, her mind drifting between thoughts of the math test, the missing boy on the poster, and the unpleasant aftertaste of the pill. Finally, the bus pulled up to their stop. As they disembarked and began the short walk to their house, Ava's spirits lifted at the sight of Jacob's car parked in the driveway. "Dad's home early," she exclaimed, picking up her pace. When they reached the front door, Emily fumbled with her keys, and the door swung open to reveal Jacob Collins, whose face broke into a wide smile at the sight of them. "They're my two favorite girls," he said, opening his arms wide. Ava rushed forward, throwing herself into her father's embrace. "Dad, you're home early," Jacob chuckled, lifting Ava off her feet in a warm, bear hug. "I sure am, Pumpkin. I thought we could all spend some extra time together, since it's the start of your school holidays." As he set Ava down, he turned to Emily and kissed her quickly. "How was your day, honey?" he asked. Emily's smile seemed a bit forced as she replied, "It was fine, just a long day." Jacob nodded understandingly, then clapped his hands together. "Well, I got an idea to cheer everyone up. How about we all cook dinner together tonight? It's Friday, after all. We could make it a fun family activity." Ava's face lit up at the suggestion. "Oh, can we?" she asked excitedly. Before Jacob could respond, however, Emily interjected, "Actually, Jacob, I need to discuss something with you first." Turning to Ava, her voice softened. "Sweetheart, why don't you go watch some TV in the living room while your father and I talk for a bit?" Though Ava's excitement deflated slightly, she nodded. "Okay, Mom," she agreed as she made her way to the living room. From there, she could hear her parents' hushed conversation behind her, a conversation that, though unintelligible in parts, filled her with an uneasy feeling. While sitting on the living room sofa with the TV remote in hand, Ava flipped through channels without really paying attention to the colorful images flashing across the screen. Her mind was preoccupied with curiosity about what her parents were discussing so intently. Absent-mindedly, her gaze wandered to the coffee table, where a small pile of mail lay, likely brought in by her father earlier. Amid envelopes and flyers, a corner of a newspaper peeked out, catching Ava's attention. Setting the remote aside, she leaned forward and gently tugged the newspaper free from the pile. As it came into full view, Ava's breath caught in her throat. On the front page was the same image she had seen on the bus stop advertisement, the missing boy, Evan Matthews. The photograph, now in print, seemed even more poignant. The boy's brown eyes stared out with a mixture of innocence and sadness that tugged at Ava's heart. In that moment, she remembered all the safety lessons her parents had drilled into her over the years. Never talk to strangers, don't accept rides from anyone you don't know, and always let mom or dad know where you are. These rules, once simple common sense, now carried a deeper, more ominous significance as she contemplated the reality of a missing child. So engrossed was Ava in her thoughts that she did not hear the bedroom door open. It wasn't until her parents entered the living room that she snapped back to the present and quickly set the newspaper aside. Jacob and Emily approached, their faces composed yet tinged with a lingering tension that Ava could not quite place. They seemed to be making an effort to appear cheerful, but there was something off about their smiles. "Sweetheart," Jacob said in an overly bright tone, "have you decided what you'd like us to cook for dinner?" Ava, still distracted by her earlier thoughts, replied hesitantly, "Oh, we haven't had spaghetti in a long time. Could we make that?" Jacob's smile became more genuine as he said, "Spaghetti sounds perfect. Great idea. Pumpkin." As Jacob moved toward the kitchen to gather ingredients, Ava stood up from the sofa and picked up the newspaper, holding it out to her mother. "Mom, look," she said, pointing to the front page. "It's the same boy from the ad at the bus stop." Emily's reaction was immediate and intense. She snatched the newspaper from Ava's hands. Her face paled as she looked at the image. "Ava," she said in a strained voice, "you shouldn't be reading the newspaper. It's for adults." Before Ava could protest, Emily turned to Jacob, who had paused in the kitchen doorway. "See," Emily said in a low but urgent tone. The two shared a loaded glance, communicating something that Ava couldn't understand as the tension in the room thickened. Feeling a growing sense of unease, Ava ventured hesitantly, "Mom, Dad, what's going on? Is everything okay?" Her parents exchanged another look before Jacob spoke. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Your mother and I just need to discuss something quickly. Adult stuff, you know." Ava's brow furrowed, and she pressed, "But what about dinner? And why can't I listen to? I'm not a baby anymore." Emily stepped forward, placing a hand on Ava's shoulder. "We know you're not a baby, honey, but there are some things that adults need to talk about privately. We won't be long, I promise." With that, her parents retreated back to the bedroom, closing the door behind them. Left alone in the living room, Ava felt confused and slightly hurt. She couldn't shake the feeling that something important was happening, a secret that involved her. Yet her parents were not sharing it. For a few minutes, she tried to distract herself by watching TV, but her attention kept drifting back to the closed bedroom door. The muffled sounds of her parents' voices, sometimes rising in what sounded like disagreement, only fueled her curiosity and concern. Finally, unable to resist, Ava crept quietly to the bedroom door and pressed her ear against the wood, straining to catch their words. Most of what she heard was too muffled to understand, yet a few phrases came through clearly: "bad idea," and "move to a new state." Ava's heart began to race as she wondered what they were discussing. Just as she leaned in even closer, hoping to hear more, the voices inside suddenly went quiet. Before she could react, the door swung open, and she stumbled back, nearly losing her balance when she came face to face with her father, whose expression was a mixture of surprise and disappointment. "Ava," he said sternly, "what are you doing? We told you this was an adult matter." Her cheeks burned with embarrassment and guilt as she stammered, I'm sorry, I was just curious. What did you mean about moving to a new state?" Emily appeared behind Jacob, her face tightening at Ava's question. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, forcing a hollow laugh. "You must have misheard us. We were just talking about our holiday plans. It was supposed to be a surprise." Ava looked between her parents, confusion and doubt warring inside her. She wanted to believe them, yet something about their explanation felt off. The tension in their faces and the urgency in their voices did not match a simple discussion about a holiday. Before she could voice her doubts or ask further questions, a shrill ring from the phone broke the moment. Emily hurried to answer, leaving Ava and Jacob standing awkwardly in the doorway. On the other end of the line, Emily's face changed from worried to relieved as she covered the mouthpiece and turned to Ava. "It's your best friend, Chloe," she said, asking if Ava wanted to come over to play. The sudden change of subject threw Ava off balance. Yes," she replied uncertainly, though she thought they were going to cook dinner together. Jacob cleared his throat and said, "Well, we can always cook later. Maybe it would be good for you to spend some time with Chloe." Emily nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, and it'll give your father and me some time to discuss our holiday plans in more detail." Still feeling unsettled by the tension, Ava considered the prospect of seeing her best friend. Finally, she said, "Okay, I'd like to go to Chloe's," as Emily confirmed the plans. With Chloe's mother, Sophia, on the phone, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just occurred. Her parents seemed almost too eager to send her away, and the mystery of their private conversation still nagged at her. But, for now, she pushed those thoughts aside and prepared to go, hoping that spending time with Chloe might clear her head. As she gathered her shoes and jacket, she resolved to enjoy her time with her friend, trusting that her parents would explain everything soon. The car ride to Chloe's house was short, barely 2 minutes, but to Ava, it felt much longer. The silence in the vehicle was thick with unspoken tension, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the occasional click of the turn signal. Sitting in the back seat with her small hands fidgeting with the seatbelt, Ava's mind raced with questions she both wanted and feared to ask. Finally, she spoke up hesitantly. "Dad, where are we going on holiday?" Jacob's eyes flickered briefly in the rearview mirror, meeting her gaze before returning his attention to the road. "Well, sweetheart," he said in a carefully measured tone, "it's supposed to be a surprise. Your mother and I still need to discuss the details." Ava frowned, unsatisfied with the vague answer, and asked, "But why is it such a big secret? Why do you need to talk about it right away?" Jacob's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel as he explained, "Sometimes adults need to plan things carefully, Ava. We want to make sure everything is perfect for our trip." Ava began to protest, but Jacob interrupted gently. "Look, we're here." Pulling up in front of Chloe's house, he added, "Let's not worry about this now. Go have fun with your friend." Unbuckling her seatbelt and still feeling unsettled, Ava opened the car door and turned back to her father. "You'll pick me up later, right?" Jacob nodded, forcing a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Of course. I'll be back in 2 or 3 hours. Be good, okay?" With a hesitant nod, Ava stepped out of the car and walked toward the house. At the front door, Ava saw Chloe and her mother, Sophia, waiting. Chloe waved excitedly, and Ava felt some of her worries begin to melt away at the sight of her best friend's smile. "Chloe," she called, rushing down the front steps to meet her. The two girls hugged and giggled, nearly losing their balance in their excitement. Sophia approached slowly with a warm smile. "Hello, Ava. It's good to see you. Chloe's been so excited for your visit," she said kindly. As they all headed inside, Sophia added, "I'm just finishing up some cleaning in Chloe's room. Why don't you girls play in the living room for now?" The girls readily agreed and soon settled on the living room carpet to work on a puzzle together. As Chloe dumped out the puzzle pieces from the box, Ava's eyes were drawn once again to a newspaper on a nearby coffee table. With a jolt of recognition, she realized it was the same newspaper she had seen at home, the one with the missing boy on the front page. Almost without thinking, Ava reached out and picked it up. "Hey, Chloe," she said, holding it up, "we have the same newspaper at home. Isn't that funny?" Chloe looked up from the puzzle pieces, her eyes focusing on the front page as she took in the image of the missing boy. A mischievous grin spread across her face as she giggled. "Oh my gosh, Ava, that boy looks just like you." Ava's brow furrowed in confusion as she protested. "What? No, he doesn't. That's a boy. I'm a girl." Caught up in what she thought was a great joke, Chloe continued teasing, "No, really. Look at his hair and his eyes. It's like looking at a boy, Ava." Anger and hurt surged in Ava's chest as she snapped sharply. "That's not funny, Chloe. I'm not a boy, and I don't look like him." Their argument soon caught the attention of Sophia, who appeared in the doorway with a concerned look. "What's going on in here, girls?" she asked. Ava, still upset, held up the newspaper. "Chloe says I look like this missing boy," she explained in a trembling voice. "But I don't. I'm a girl." Sophia gently took the newspaper from Ava's hands and studied the front page. For a long moment, her expression resembled that which Ava had seen on her own mother's face when she had seen the ad at the bus stop. A mixture of shock and something Ava could not identify. Just then, a sharp knock at the front door startled them all. Sophia snapped out of her reverie and moved quickly toward the door. "I'll get it," she said, her voice sounding slightly strained. Ava and Chloe exchanged confused glances as Sophia disappeared into the hallway. They could hear the sound of the front door opening, followed by muffled voices. To Ava's surprise, she heard a familiar voice, her mother's, saying, "Oh, so sorry for the short notice, Sophia. Rebecca," as the words carried clearly into the living room. "Something's come up, and we need to leave right away." Ava stood up, puzzle forgotten, and moved toward the hallway. There, she saw her parents standing in the doorway, looking flustered and slightly out of breath. Sophia's voice was filled with surprise as she addressed them. "Rebecca, Jacob, what's going on? I thought Ava was staying for a few hours." Rebecca nodded, her movements jerky and nervous. "Yes, that was the plan, but we've had a change of plans. We're going on that holiday we mentioned, and we need to leave tonight." As Ava stepped into the hallway, a mix of confusion and a touch of excitement welled up inside her. "We're going on holiday now?" she asked, looking between her parents and Sophia. Her parents exchanged intense glances, and Ava was struck by the desperation in their eyes. A shiver of unease ran down her spine. "Yes, sweetheart," Jacob said forcefully. "It's a surprise trip." Sophia looked bewildered, her gaze moving back and forth between Ava and her parents, and slowly said, "Wow, this is very sudden. Where are you going? And why so much luggage?" She gestured toward the car behind them, now clearly packed full of suitcases and boxes. Rebecca stepped forward, placing a hand on Sophia's arm. "It's a long story," she said quietly. "We'll explain everything later. Right now, we really need to get going." Caught up in the whirlwind of activity, Ava barely had time to say goodbye to Chloe before she was ushered back to the car. Climbing into the back seat, she caught a glimpse of Sophia's face, a mixture of confusion and concern that twisted Ava's stomach with anxiety as they pulled away from the curb. In the front seat, her parents spoke in low, urgent tones that Ava strained to hear, but their words remained too quiet to decipher. All she knew was that something big was happening, and she was being swept along in its wake. As the familiar streets of their neighborhood gave way to the main road, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an ordinary holiday. A palpable undercurrent of urgency and fear pulsed through the car. The vehicle sped through darkening streets, streetlights flickering to life as dusk settled over the city. In the back seat, her small frame dwarfed by the piled luggage, Ava leaned forward, her voice small but determined. "Mom, Dad, where are we really going?" Her parents exchanged a quick glance before Rebecca turned in her seat to face Ava. Her smile, though forced, did not quite reach her eyes as she explained, "We're going to stay at a hotel near the airport tonight, and tomorrow we'll be flying to our holiday destination." Ava's brow furrowed. "But where? And why won't you tell me?" Jacob spoke up, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "It's a surprise, Pumpkin. We wanted to be special for you." Ava was not satisfied with the answer. Her eyes swept over the mountain of luggage crammed into the car. "Why do we have so much stuff? How long are we staying?" Rebecca's smile faltered momentarily. "Well, we want to be prepared for anything. You never know what you might need on a big trip like this." As Ava processed these words, her eyes fell on something familiar wedged between two suitcases, her school bag, complete with textbooks and study materials. "Mom," she said slowly, confusion evident in her voice. "Why did you pack my school stuff? We don't need that for a holiday, do we?" The car swerved slightly as Jacob's hands tightened on the steering wheel, and Rebecca's forced cheerfulness gave way to irritation. "That's enough questions," she snapped sharply. "We've told you it's a surprise. You need to be quiet now." Ava recoiled at her mother's tone, shrinking back into her seat as tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. A mixture of hurt and fear welled up inside her, for this did not feel like the start of an exciting holiday. Something was terribly wrong, though she couldn't yet understand what. The rest of the drive passed in intense silence. Ava stared out the window, watching unfamiliar neighborhoods flash by as each turn took them further from the comfort and safety of home. Finally, they pulled into the parking lot of a large hotel near the airport. The building loomed over them, its windows glowing warmly against the night sky. Under other circumstances, Ava might have been excited about staying in such a grand place, but now it felt intimidating. They checked in quickly, Jacob speaking in low, hurried tones with the receptionist while Rebecca maintained a firm grip on Ava's hand as they made their way to their room. Laden with luggage, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that her parents were constantly looking over their shoulders, as if expecting someone to be following them. Once inside the room, Jacob methodically began unpacking certain items while Rebecca drew the curtains tightly shut. Ava sat on one of the beds, watching their frantic activity with growing unease, wondering, "Why don't we go down to the lobby for a drink?" Jacob suggested suddenly, his voice overly bright. "We could all use a little refreshment after that drive. How about an iced tea for you, Ava?" Rebecca nodded a bit too enthusiastically. "That's a wonderful idea. What do you say, sweetie?" Ava agreed hesitantly, hoping that perhaps, in a public space, her parents might relax and things might start to feel normal again. They made their way down to the lobby and found seats in the hotel bar. As they settled in with their drinks, a soda for Jacob, a glass of wine for Rebecca, and an iced tea for Ava, the young girl couldn't help but notice how her parents' eyes kept darting around the room as if searching for potential threats. Ava sipped her iced tea slowly, the sweet liquid doing little to soothe her churning stomach. Just as she was about to ask another question, she noticed a man at a nearby table staring intently in their direction. The man's gaze was fixed on Rebecca, his expression growing darker by the second. Suddenly, he stood up, scraping his chair loudly against the floor as he approached their table with purposeful, angry steps. "You are disgusting," he spat directly at Rebecca. "People like you should not be allowed to have a child." Rebecca froze, her face draining of color as she managed to stammer, "Excuse me?" The man's voice rose, drawing the attention of other patrons. "You are not a mother," he continued, his words laced with venom. "This is disgusting. People like you having children should be a crime." Ava shrank back in her chair, overwhelmed by fear and confusion. She could not understand why the stranger was so angry at her mother. Before the situation could escalate further, a hotel staff member intervened quickly, escorting the agitated man away. The lobby buzzed with whispered discussions and furious stares directed at their table. Rebecca abruptly stood up, her hands trembling as she gathered her things. "This has been too much," she said in a quivering voice. "We should go back to our room." Hastily, they returned to the elevator. Ava's mind raced. What did that man mean? Why was he so upset with her mother? The fear and confusion that had been building throughout the day crystallized into a hard knot in her stomach. Back in their room, Ava could no longer contain herself. "Mom," she asked in a small, scared voice, "what did that man mean? Why was he so angry at you?" Rebecca's face turned pale as she busied herself with unpacking. "He was just drunk, sweetheart," she said without meeting Ava's eyes. Although some people say silly things when they've had too much to drink, Ava sensed that this was not the whole truth. The man hadn't merely been drunk. He had been angry, and the trembling of her mother's hands and her averted gaze told her that there was more to the story than she was being told. The tension in the hotel room was palpable as Ava sat on the edge of the bed, her small frame dwarfed by the covers. Her parents moved about with frantic, disjointed energy, a stark contrast to their usual composed demeanor. Suddenly, Rebecca's voice cut through the silence. "It's time for you to go to sleep. We have to get up early tomorrow to catch our flight." Ava wanted to protest and demand answers to the myriad questions swirling in her mind, but the stern look on her mother's face silenced her. Nodding silently, she climbed under the covers, still fully dressed. Rebecca approached the bed, leaning down to place a kiss on Ava's forehead, a gesture that had always been comforting but now felt strangely hollow. "Your father and I are going to go down to the hotel lobby for another drink," she said, her voice strained, "but we'll be back soon. You should try to sleep, okay?" Ava nodded again, watching as her parents exited the room and the door clicked shut behind them. The silence that followed was deafening. Despite her mother's instructions, sleep was the furthest thing from Ava's mind. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling as her thoughts raced. The hushed conversations, the hurried packing, the angry man in the lobby, none of it made sense. The more she thought about it, the more confused and scared she became. She wasn't sure how much time had passed when a shrill ringing cut through the silence. Startled, Ava sat up and realized the sound was coming from a phone on the bedside table that her mother must have forgotten in their rush. Unsure of what to do, she had been taught not to answer other people's phones, but what if it was important? What if it was about their surprise trip? The phone continued to ring insistently. Finally, Ava reached out and picked it up. The caller ID showed a name she recognized: Sophia. For a moment, Ava said nothing, her throat tightening with uncertainty. Before she could decide whether to speak, Sophia's voice came through the line, urgent and worried. "Rebecca, tell me the truth. What is going on here? I've tried to contact you dozens of times now. Tell me the truth. Is this boy?" Ava's heart raced at the strange question. Swallowing hard, she finally found her voice. "Sorry, I'm not Mom. It's Ava. Mom is in the hotel lobby." Sophia's gasp was audible over the phone. "Oh, I'm so glad you're okay." Her voice softened, becoming gentle yet urgent. "Ava, please tell me. Did your parents tell you where you were going?" Confused by the question and its tone, Ava replied hesitantly, "No, it's a surprise, but I think we're going somewhere special. We have so much luggage, and they even brought my school stuff. I think we're going on a long holiday trip." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Oh no, I knew it," Sophia murmured, her voice growing more focused and intense. "Ava, listen to me. You have to tell me where you are right now." "What?" Ava's confusion increased by the second as Sophia's voice became almost pleading. "You just have to trust me right now. Do you remember that newspaper you showed me earlier? There is something very wrong with this, and it has to do with you. Please, you just have to trust me now." Ava's mind reeled, unable to understand what was happening, but something in Sophia's voice, the urgency, the concern, made her want to comply. "We're at a hotel near the airport," Ava said slowly. "I think I saw the name Skyway Stays or Skyra Stay. I'm not sure." "Okay, good," Sophia replied, her voice tight with relief. "Ava, I want you to stay on the line with me. I'm going to call for help. Whatever you do, don't tell your parents about this call, okay?" Before Ava could respond, she heard the sound of the hotel room door opening. Her parents' voices drifted in from the entryway, and panic seized her as she heard, "Mom and Dad are back," whispered hurriedly into the phone. Suddenly, her mother's voice rang out in confusion. "Ava, why are the lights on? What are you doing on my phone?" Ava looked up in wide-eyed fear to see her mother rushing toward her. In one swift motion, Emily snatched the phone from Ava's grasp. Glancing at the screen, her expression morphed from shock to anger. Without a word, she ended the call and threw the phone to the ground with such force that it shattered into pieces. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the sound of Emily's heavy breathing and the crunch of the shattered phone underfoot. Ava sat frozen on the bed, tears welling up in her eyes. She had never seen her mother like this, so angry, so frightened. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," she whimpered, but Emily wasn't listening. She turned to Jacob, who stood in the doorway with a mask of shock and fear. "We have to go," Emily said in a trembling voice. "We don't have time to pack everything. Just grab what we need." Jacob nodded, springing into action as he began throwing essential items into a single suitcase. Meanwhile, Emily paced the room, muttering under her breath. Ava watched in stunned silence as her parents moved around with frantic energy. She wanted to ask what was happening, why they were leaving so suddenly, but the words stuck in her throat. Finally, Jacob zipped up the suitcase and turned to Ava. "Come on, sweetheart," he said in a strained voice with a false cheer. "We're going on an adventure." As they rushed out of the hotel room, leaving most of their belongings behind, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't an adventure at all. It felt more like they were running away from something. The hotel lobby was eerily quiet as Ava and her parents hurried through it, their footsteps echoing off the polished marble floors. In the midst of the commotion, a man at a nearby desk looked up from his computer with a puzzled expression as he watched the family hurry out. Outside, the cool night air hit Ava's face, making her shiver. Jacob, still gripping her hand tightly, raised his other arm to hail a taxi. As they waited, Ava could feel the tension radiating from her parents. They stood rigid, eyes darting back and forth as if expecting danger to leap from the shadows. Soon, a yellow taxi pulled up to the curb, and Jacob quickly ushered Ava into the back seat, with Emily sliding in after them, slamming the door shut with more force than necessary. "Airport, please," Jacob said to the driver in a strained and hurried voice as the taxi pulled away. Ava pressed her face against the window, watching the hotel recede into the distance. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She wanted to ask questions and demand explanations, but the tense atmosphere in the car held her silent. After only a few minutes, the first police siren pierced the night air. Ava felt her mother stiffen beside her, and she saw Jacob's knuckles turn white as he gripped the seat in front of him. "Can't you go any faster?" Emily hissed at the driver, her voice tight with panic. The driver, sensing the urgency, pressed down on the accelerator, but it was too late. More sirens joined the first, growing louder by the second. In the rearview mirror, Ava saw the flashing lights of multiple police cars gaining on them rapidly. Suddenly, the taxi screeched to a halt, blocked by 3 police cars that had pulled up in front, effectively cutting off their escape route. Ava's heart pounded in her chest as she watched more police vehicles surround them. "Get out of the car now!" A booming voice commanded through a megaphone, startling Ava. Her parents exchanged a desperate look for a moment. Ava thought they might try to run, but then, with a defeated sigh, Jacob opened the car door. "It's over," he murmured softly, more to himself than to anyone else, as they stepped out of the taxi. Ava was momentarily blinded by the bright spotlight from the police cars. She could barely make out the silhouettes of several officers, their weapons drawn and pointed in their direction. "On your knees. Hands where we can see them," a harsh command rang out. In horror, Ava watched as her parents slowly sank to their knees on the cold pavement, their hands raised above their heads. Frozen with fear, she too lowered herself onto the rough asphalt, scraping her knees through her jeans. Amidst the chaos, she could hear her mother sobbing nearby and her father's ragged breathing. Officers quickly swarmed around them, roughly handcuffing her parents and pulling them to their feet before leading them towards separate police cars. "Mom! Dad!" Ava finally found her voice, crying out as she watched them being taken away. An officer approached her, his face a mix of concern and determination, and knelt beside her in a gentler tone. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. We're here to help you." Yet, Ava could not understand how taking her parents away could possibly be a good thing. She tried to stand and run to them, but gentle hands held her back. Then, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Ava turned to see Sophia, Chloe's mother, pushing her way through the crowd of officers. Her face was a mask of worry and relief. "Oh, thank God," Sophia breathed as she reached Ava, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I was so worried, but you're safe now, sweetheart. You're safe." Clinging to Sophia, Ava's small body shook with sobs as she saw her parents being placed in separate police cars. Her mother's face was streaked with tears, while her father stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. "What's happening?" Ava managed to choke out between sobs. "Why are they taking my parents away?" Sophia pulled back slightly, her hands on Ava's shoulders. I'm not sure yet. Let me explain." Before she could continue, an officer with a grave expression approached. "We need to take you to the station," he said to Sophia. "There's a lot we need to sort out." Sophia nodded and then turned back to Ava. "We're going to go with this kind officer now, okay? I promise I'll be with you the whole time." As Sophia guided Ava toward one of the police cars, Ava couldn't help but glance back at the receding figures of her parents, the flashing police lights casting an eerie glow that made the scene seem like a terrible nightmare. But this was no nightmare. It was frighteningly real. At the police station, the atmosphere was one of frantic activity. Ava was led inside, her small hand tightly clasped in Sophia's, while the harsh fluorescent lights made everything seem stark and unfamiliar. A far cry from the warm, comforting world she had known just hours before. Officers bustled about, their voices a low murmur of urgency and purpose. Overwhelmed, Ava looked up at Sophia, seeking an explanation, some reassurance that everything would soon return to normal. With a quivering voice, Ava asked, "What's going on here? Why did they take my parents away?" Sophia's face was filled with concern and sympathy as she knelt down to Ava's level. "Oh, Ava, I don't know how to explain this. It's complicated," she began softly. "Please, tell me, what did your parents do wrong?" Sophia then asked Ava if she remembered the newspaper she had seen earlier, the one with the missing boy's image. Ava nodded slowly, unsure of where the conversation was leading. That boy is you," Sophia said in a measured tone that hung heavily in the air. Ava shook her head, unable to process what she had just heard. "What do you mean? I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. I'm Ava Collins." Before Sophia could continue, an officer with a kind yet serious face approached. "We need to take your statement now," he said to Sophia, adding, "We have some questions we need to ask. Would you like to come with us?" Sophia nodded, taking Ava's hand once more. "Of course, I'm not leaving your side." They were led into a small, child-friendly room with a table and chairs. The room, decorated with cheerful posters and a small collection of toys, was clearly designed to be as non-threatening as possible for children. A well-dressed social worker introduced herself as Janine Carter, assigned to Ava's case, while another man in plain clothes, Detective Marcus Thompson, introduced himself with a gentle greeting. "Hello, Ava," Detective Thompson said. "We know this must be very confusing and scary for you right now, but we're here to help. We just need to ask you a few questions and explain some things." Ava nodded mutely, her eyes wide and wary. Detective Thompson pulled out a familiar newspaper and placed it on the table before Ava. The missing boy's face, Evan Matthews, stared up at her, twisting her stomach in a way that was difficult to explain. "This boy in the picture went missing from an orphanage when he was 2 years old," Detective Thompson explained carefully. Ava nodded slowly, still not fully understanding. "The thing is, Ava," he continued, "we have reason to believe that you are Evan Matthews." He paused and glanced at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly, then turned back to Ava, speaking in a gentle tone. "When you were at Chloe's house earlier today, you showed Sophia that newspaper with the missing boy's picture. After you left, Sophia took another look and discussed it with her husband. They both agreed that the boy in the photo bore a striking resemblance to you. It raised some concerns." Sophia added softly, "I tried to reach your mother to ask her about it, but she ignored me. Then, when you answered the phone at the hotel and told me about all the luggage, I realized your parents must have become frightened because of the person ads. They seem to be trying to flee with you." The words hit Ava like a physical blow. She shook her head vehemently, tears welling in her eyes as she insisted, "No, that's not true. I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. I'm Ava Collins." Social worker Janine leaned forward, her voice soft and reassuring. "Sweetheart, we understand that this is very difficult to hear. It's important for you to know that how you feel inside, whether you feel like a girl or a boy, is entirely up to you. We're not here to tell you who you should be. We're just trying to understand what happened." Ava's mind reeled as she searched their faces for any sign of a mistake or misunderstanding, but all she saw was genuine sympathy and concern. "But my parents, they've always been my parents. How could I be someone else?" Detective Thompson's expression grew serious as he added, "We believe that the people you have known as your parents are not your biological parents. We think they may have taken you from the orphanage when you were very young." The room seemed to spin as Ava felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet, leaving her floating in a sea of confusion and disbelief. "No," she whispered shakily, "that can't be true. They love me. They wouldn't do that." Sophia reached out, placing a comforting hand on Ava's arm. "I know it's hard to believe, sweetheart, but there are things your parents did that weren't right, things that have made us very concerned about your safety and well-being." With tears streaming down her face, Ava asked, "What things? What did they do?" The adults exchanged glances, silently deciding how much to reveal. The small interview room, despite its cheerful decorations, began to feel oppressively close. Detective Thompson cleared his throat softly and said, "Ava, we need to ask you a few more questions. Can you tell us about your life with the Collins family? Did they ever do anything that made you uncomfortable or scared?" Ava's brow furrowed as she thought back over her life. Despite the shock of recent revelations, she could not recall any moments of fear or discomfort with her parents. "No," she said quietly. "They were always kind to me. They loved me." The adults exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of concern and skepticism. "They never hurt you?" Janine pressed gently. "They never made you do anything you didn't want to do?" Ava shook her head emphatically. "No, never. Only today. Today they were different, angry, and scared." Detective Thompson leaned forward, his face growing serious. "Ava, this is very important. We need to know if your parents ever told you that you were a boy, or if they ever talked about you being different from other girls." Ava's mind raced as she tried to recall any such conversations, but all she remembered was a life where she had always been herself, a girl. "No," she said in a small but certain voice. "They never said anything like that. I've always been a girl. I'm a girl." Just as Ava was about to speak further, the door burst open and another officer rushed in. His face was flushed with excitement, and he held a small orange pill bottle in his hand. "We found this in your mother's purse," he announced as he placed the bottle on the table. Sophia leaned forward, her eyes widening in recognition. "Those are the pills I've seen your mother, Emily, taking," she said. "She told me they were her hormone pills, part of her transition." Ava's frustration surged as she protested. "No, those are my asthma pills. I have to take them every day, or I might have trouble breathing. Mom always makes sure I take them on time." The officer picked up the bottle and examined the label closely. "These aren't asthma medications," he said gravely. "These are high-dose estrogen pills used for hormone therapy in transgender adults. A child should definitely not be taking these." The room fell silent as the full implications of this discovery sank in. Ava felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. She looked from face to face, searching for a sign that this was all a mistake, but all she saw was growing concern and alarm. Sophia broke the tense silence, her voice trembling slightly. "Oh my, I knew about Emily being transgender. I always knew she took hormone pills for her transition, but I never, not in my wildest dreams, would have thought she was giving those pills to you, Ava. This is unthinkable." Detective Thompson's expression turned grave as he stated, "I think we need to get you to a hospital right away. We don't know what effects these pills might have had on your body. You need to be examined by a doctor as soon as possible." Janine nodded in agreement. "I'll make the arrangements," she said, standing up and moving toward the door. Ava's panic rose in her chest. "No," she protested, her voice trembling. "I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to go home. I want my parents." Sophia moved quickly to Ava's side, wrapping an arm around her small shoulders. "I know this is scary, sweetheart," she said softly, "but we need to make sure you're okay. The doctors just want to help you." As the adults bustled around, making phone calls and arrangements, Ava felt as if she were watching everything happen from a great distance. The world she had known The life she had lived was crumbling around her. Soon, the police car cut through the night. Its siren was silent, but its intermittent blue flashes danced across the darkened streets as they made their way toward the hospital. Across town, Ava sat in the back seat, sandwiched between Sophia and Janine, while Detective Thompson sat in the front passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at her with a mixture of concern and sympathy. The city blurred past outside the windows, but Ava barely noticed. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and disbelief. Every recollection from the past few hours replayed in her head, each wave of memory bringing fresh pain and uncertainty. In a small voice, barely audible over the hum of the car's engine, Ava asked, "What's going to happen to my parents?" Sophia exchanged a glance with Janine before answering gently but firmly, "Ava, what your parents did was very wrong. They broke the law, and they'll have to face the consequences. They'll probably have to go to prison." Tears welled in Ava's eyes again, and despite everything she had learned, despite the betrayal and lies, she couldn't shake the love she still felt for the people who had raised her. "But they love me. They've always taken care of me," she protested weakly. Sophia pulled Ava closer, her arm a comforting weight around her. "I know it's hard to understand, sweetheart, but love is complicated. Sometimes people who love us still do things that are wrong. Your parents made some very bad choices, even if they thought they were doing it out of love." Ava nodded slowly, trying to process the situation, when a new fear suddenly gripped her. "What's going to happen to me now? Where will I go if they go to prison?" The question hung heavily in the air of the police car. Sophia, tears forming in her own eyes as she saw the fear and vulnerability in Ava's face, hugged her tighter and said, "Ava, listen to me very carefully. You are not alone. You have your best friend Chloe, you have me, and there are many other people who care about you and want to help you. I know this is incredibly hard, but you are very strong and brave for enduring all this." Ava buried her face in Sophia's shoulder, her small body shaking with quiet sobs. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't know who I am anymore." Sophia gently stroked Ava's hair and reassured her, "You are you. No matter what name you have or what your past is, you're still the same person inside. And we're going to help you figure all of this out. I promise." As the car fell silent, except for Ava's quiet sniffles, they drove through the night toward the hospital. Sophia made a silent promise to herself that she would be there for Ava through this difficult time, no matter how hard it got. In her heart, she hoped that one day Ava would fully understand the truth behind what had happened to her, and that she would have the strength and support to decide for herself whether she wanted to live as Evan Matthews or continue as Ava Collins. As the hospital's windows glowed like beacons in the night, Sophia felt a mix of hope and apprehension. This was just the beginning of a long, challenging journey for Ava, a journey filled with medical examinations, psychological evaluations, legal proceedings, and countless other challenges. Yet, looking down at the girl curled up against her side, Sophia felt fierce determination. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Ava would not have to navigate this confusing new world alone. And so, as the hospital came into view and the night deepened around them, the story of Ava Collins and her troubled family reached a turning point. A turning point where every secret and every unanswered question would eventually demand its due explanation, and where a brave little girl, caught in a storm of betrayal and love, would begin the search for her true self.